Today, we're jumping into the book of Joshua, and it is so much more than just ancient history. It's basically God's blueprint for how you go from wandering in a desert to actually living in the Promised Land. Over about 25 years, it gives us this incredible masterclass in how to claim the promises God has for us.
Okay, so you have to picture this. Moses, this legendary leader, is gone. A whole nation is now looking at his number two, Joshua, thinking, what now? And this is the very first thing God says to him. It's not some complex battle strategy. It's a foundational promise, a bedrock truth. I am with you. That promise is going to be the engine for everything that happens next. And this really is the central question of the whole book, isn't it? For 40 years, Israel heard about this promised land. But hearing about a promise and actually holding it in your hand are two very different things. How do you make that leap? How does a future hope become your current reality? Well, the book of Joshua is the playbook for that.
All right, so the stage is set. The leadership torch is officially passed from Moses to Joshua. And God's instruction? It's crystal clear. Get up and go over this Jordan River. He doubles down on the promise he made to their ancestors, even laying out the borders of the land. The promise is rock solid. Now, it's time to act.
And check out who God uses for this first move. Before a single sword is drawn, we meet Rahab, a Canaanite, a prostitute. This is totally radical. But she'd heard the stories about Israel's God, and she puts her faith on the line. She hides the spies and makes this incredible declaration of faith. And in this amazing twist of grace, she's not only saved, but she actually ends up in the family tree of Jesus. Her signal for salvation? A simple scarlet rope, a beautiful picture of faith that really sets the tone for God's totally unexpected methods.
And this whole theme of unlikely methods is just getting started. If Israel was expecting to win by following a standard military textbook, they were in for a big surprise. God's plans were specifically designed to make one thing absolutely clear. He was the one fighting for them. Their job? Just trust and obey. So, the first big test comes at the Jordan River. And get this, it's flood season. This isn't some gentle stream, it's a raging, overflowing torrent. But the moment the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant step in, boom, God stops the water in its tracks. They walk across on dry ground. It's an undeniable miracle that shows everyone God's power is with Joshua, just like it was with Moses at the Red Sea. So they're across the river, staring at the impossible fortress of Jericho. What's God's brilliant strategy? No siege engines, no battering rams, just walking. Seriously, walk around it once a day for 6 days, in silence. Then on the 7th day, walk around it 7 times, the priests blow their trumpets, and everyone lets out a massive shout. It's a strategy that looks absolutely ridiculous, but it's all about radical obedience. And just like that, the walls of Jericho come crashing down. It's a massive victory. But the story doesn't just stay on that mountaintop. We're about to learn a very hard lesson. God's promises might be certain, but our human choices, both good and bad, have huge, immediate consequences for everyone. And this brings us to such a stark night and day contrast. At Jericho, they followed God's bizarre plan to the letter and got a miracle. But at the very next town, a much smaller city called Ai, they are utterly defeated. Why? Well, the reason is just sobering. One man, Achan, secretly disobeyed God and stole some forbidden loot. His personal, hidden sin infected the whole community and led directly to their defeat. The lessons keep on coming. Next up, a group called the Gibeonites trick Joshua into signing a peace treaty. They show up with moldy bread and worn-out clothes, pretending they've traveled from a faraway land. And the Bible tells us the exact reason Israel fell for it. Their leaders did not ask counsel of the Lord. It's such a costly mistake and a powerful reminder to bring every decision to God first.
Okay, so after they deal with these internal issues of sin and deception, the conquest just kicks into overdrive. The whole story shifts to these massive campaigns in the south and the north. And in battle after battle, it's not Israel's skill that wins the day, it's the undeniable, overwhelming power of God on full display.
And this leads to one of the most jaw-dropping moments in the entire Bible. In the middle of a huge battle against 5 enemy kings, Joshua realizes he's running out of daylight. So he prays this audacious prayer and commands the sun and the moon to just stop in the sky. And the Bible says God listened to the voice of a man. He literally held the solar system in place to give his people the victory.
From there, the campaign just sweeps across the land like a whirlwind. One king after another, one city after another, just falls.
By the time the dust finally settles on all the fighting, the final score is just staggering: 31 kings defeated. This wasn't just a handful of wins, it was a total, decisive conquest, orchestrated by God from beginning to end.
So, with the fighting over, the land finally has rest. And that kicks off the second major part of the book, dividing up the real estate. This is the promise becoming tangible property. The land is meticulously divided among the tribes, which shows just how much God cares about the details. He even makes sure the tribe of Levi, the priests, are given cities to live in all throughout the nation so they can serve everyone.
And right in the middle of all this, we get this incredible close-up on a hero of faith named Caleb. Remember him? He was one of the 2 good spies from 45 years earlier. Now, at 85 years old, he doesn't ask for a nice, quiet place to retire. No way. He asks for the mountain region, the very place where the fearsome giants live, confidently saying, "I know God will be with me to drive them out." What faith!
Honestly, this single verse is the perfect summary of the entire book of Joshua. It's the ultimate statement on God's character. Every promise he made about the land, the victory, the rest, every single one of them came true. It just proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is a promise keeper. What he says, he does. Period. Now here's where things get really fascinating: the connection to Jesus. Joshua's name in Hebrew is Yeshua. Does that sound familiar? It's the exact same name as Jesus. And this is no coincidence. It's a beautiful spiritual picture. Joshua, the first Yeshua, led his people into a physical promised land, but Jesus, the ultimate Yeshua, leads all who trust him into the true promised land of eternal rest by defeating our real enemies, sin and death. As the book winds down and as Joshua's life comes to an end, he gathers the whole nation for one last talk. He reminds them of everything God has done, all the way from their ancestors up to that day. And then he throws down a challenge to the new generation, the ones who grew up in the promised land, who never saw the miracles in Egypt with their own eyes.
In the end, this is what the whole book boils down to: a choice. After seeing all of God's faithfulness, the decision still rests with the people. And Joshua draws a line in the sand with this famous declaration for himself and his family. He shows us that getting the land was never the ultimate goal. The goal was always a faithful relationship with the God who gave it. And that is a choice that every single generation and every one of us has to make for ourselves. So to wrap it all up, the book flows in a really simple 3-part structure. First, you have the conquest, where God takes the land for them. Then the distribution, where God gives the land to them. And finally, the covenant, where the people recommit themselves to God in the land. Conquest, distribution, covenant. And that brings the message of this ancient book right into our lives right now. God has incredible promises for you, but they aren't meant to be passively received. They require our participation. They call for an active, obedient faith. So the question Joshua leaves us with is this: will you choose to step out, to trust God's plans, even when they seem strange, and to claim all that he has for you through Jesus? Hey, if this look into Joshua helped you out, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next one. We'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest takeaway from this amazing book? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining us.